Hi, folks. Good evening, and welcome to another afternoon or evening here with Jim O'Connell and Education Matters. You're very welcome. It's an exciting day. Like it seems we always have something exciting going on. Today it's voting day. If you're watching live, it's 6 o'clock on Tuesday, November 6th. And it's been a crazy day out there. I'm actually surprised, and I have the good fortune sitting here of not knowing. Like this show will be carried a number of times over the next week. The nature of this is that we're live here with you on Tuesday at 6 o'clock from 6 to 7, and then the program is repeated at other hours during the week. So sometimes I have to, swallow my words, so to speak, because that which I've spoken about hasn't yet happened, and in this case, the election. But it would appear that there is a very robust turnout. I'm not sure what that means. I think the talking heads believe that it accrues to the benefit of Democrats. But who knows? I think. Polls and talking heads and chatterers have been wrong before. They may be wrong again. But I do like the idea that people are out voting. I think that's a wonderful thing. And just anecdotally looking at my Facebook and other social media feeds during the day, there were a number of people who have been on. Talking about the fact they're putting on their stickers, I voted, which is just great to see. So. The first thing I guess I should say is that if you're watching this live, it's 6 o'clock or a minute after 6 or so, and if you haven't voted, please turn off your TV and go vote, regardless of what your inclination is or who you support. People need to vote. It's just very important, especially if you're on the younger side of the voting age. The number of it's just very disheartening that the number of people between the ages of 18 and 25 or so, that something around a quarter or something like that. I don't have the exact numbers with me, but a small proportion of them vote. So. Anything I have to say for the next 55 minutes will be less important than you going out and voting. Polling places are open until 7 o'clock, and every vote counts. I think some of the elections in New Hampshire I expect to be very tight. Again, we'll know in a few hours, I guess, but. It's important also, we have the big ticket, up the top of ticket races. People involved in politics they like to encourage people to start at the bottom of the ballot and work upwards, so that you don't sort of run out of steam as you work your way down from governor to executive councillor to congressional delegate and down through the local races, or in this case, local races, meaning state races. And don't forget things like my good friend Bill Barry is running for sheriff, and sometimes people stop after that top of ticket vote, and I think it's important to go all the way down. When it comes to education, the effect is huge. The choices that people in Manchester and all over the state make today. Have a real effect. If things were to change in Concord, everything could change tomorrow. None of this is automatic or etched in stone, or it has to be how it is. There are a lot of younger candidates going, people in their 30s and 40s, which sadly in the state of New Hampshire is young, because we have the oldest or the second oldest population in the United States, and we're growing older, and we're losing young people. And this is one of the reasons why I'm passionate about education, and why I come on to talk about education is because education is key to the economic well-being of our state and of our city, and it's imperative that as a society, the state of New Hampshire, and in particular the Greater Manchester region, needs to do something to change the narrative, so to speak, change the condition of people of this idea of having the oldest population in the country, and not being able to hold and retain the young people that we have, or to attract young people. And we're seeing businesses today, because of an unemployment rate of, I think in the state is now 2.7%. So that's effectively full employment. So we have, if you were opening a business not right at this moment, you've got a lot of positive things one could say about New Hampshire, and Manchester is an attractive place to do that. It's got lots of positives, but amongst its negatives is this idea that we don't have the available population of workers, and we don't have the next generation coming along because they're getting out, and that should be true of some remote corner of the world, but sadly it's the case here. So your vote is very important, because the decisions that we're making, we have, Governor Sununu has been talking, for instance, about that we have a surplus of revenue, and how great it is to have surplus money that seemingly that the state doesn't know what to do with, which is just ridiculous. It isn't as though the state of New Hampshire has found more economical ways to do things, and it's passing on savings. The case is with regard to education in Manchester, as an example. Just in Manchester, as I've said now a number of weeks, the downshifting of costs for pension costs for the school system represents over $4 million, between $4 and $5 million this year, and that goes on every year, per year. I don't want to bore people who watch this program regularly with the details of what that means, but this was a state cost which was negotiated by the state, agreed to by the state. Manchester aldermen or school board had no vote, no function, and no voice in the establishment of that arrangement many years ago, nor have they had any voice, or we the taxpayers have had any voice in it being handed down to taxpayers. So just the buck stops where the buck stops. Part of the reason why Chris Sununu can strut around the place talking about we have a surplus is for reasons like this. It is a nonsense, because we have 60% of our bridges are in need of repair. We have 10 or 20% of them which are in a dangerous condition, might be but in a very serious condition. It's a multi-billion-dollar problem, and there's no plan to fix it. It makes no sense for the state to be claiming that the governor to be claiming that he has money. Of course he has, because he's taken it he's put his hand into the pockets of the taxpayers of Manchester. If you own a property in Manchester, then you're paying your proportion of the $4 or $5 million a year that one set of decisions is having. So I've used the analogy with my house that if I were to decide to not purchase or to purchase only enough food to have breakfast every morning in my house, and I just eliminated lunch and dinner, I could reduce the budget too, and I could stand in my doorstep shouting across the street to my neighbours saying, you know what, I reduced the budget in this house by 10%, and we now have a surplus. Well, that guy actually feeds his kids, and I don't feed mine. I don't know if the analogy should be simple enough. It just isn't right. Anybody can do it. You can do this, easily if you simply don't fund the things you're supposed to fund. And so there is an effect if Governor Sununu were to be defeated, or if not defeated, if he were to be scared, in the sense of electorally scared, and get the message from voters that this kind of carry on is not acceptable. Passing on debts to our children and our grandchildren is unacceptable. The City of Manchester is doing it all day long. We have a set of infrastructure and buildings that we are sitting on, that we've inherited this real estate and these facilities from previous generations. and we're sitting on them, not spending a dime. There's no work going on to create what is necessary for the next generation. They're going to have to do it themselves because we're sitting pat. So it's very important. Go out and vote. Make the and you can make a difference, and your voice can be heard. Before going further about voting, I would like to, on a more pleasant note, perhaps. Well, voting isn't necessarily unpleasant. It some there are some winners and some losers. Some people win, some people lose. So you can. I don't see a call coming in here. I see there was a call coming in. I think it might have gone.
Yes, line 1.
Line 1. Okay. Hello. Go ahead.
Yes, I have two questions, and I'll ask them, and then I'll hang up and listen to your response.
Okay.
What is your opinion about principals who allow teachers to talk about their dissatisfaction with their contract during school hours with students? And also, if you could speak about the Webster principal situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. So let me start with the second one first, the Webster school thing. This is not to muddy the waters. This is part of a bigger problem. It's very unsatisfactory as a taxpayer, as a parent of kids in a school system, that things go on like what has happened at Webster School, which is the story there for anybody who's not following, is that the principal was eliminated, suspended, or whatever the right words might be used, but had been at work during the summer, and then for some unexplained reason was suspended or put on leave, on paid leave, and then officially was terminated last week after months and months, and there's been a temporary principal there who will now continue to be principal while the process of finding a new principal goes on. I do, and there is nothing in the public domain about the reason why this principal, who seemingly, if one is to go by the people who knew her, the staff who worked there, the parents of kids at Webster Street, everybody had nothing but the highest of praise for her. So to my caller, I don't know the facts of what happened there, and so I find it very frustrating because it has gone on again and again in the city. And I understand the need for people's individual privacy, but in the case of the principal at Webster School, who's now been terminated, she even came before the school board maybe 2 months ago to speak, and she was a little cryptic because she didn't refer to what the actual issue was. So as a taxpayer, as a concerned resident, as a parent of kids, etc., I'm left wondering what is really going on. Are there a small group of people in Manchester who know things? And it's not that I'm jealous of that I'm left outside the circle of knowledge from that movie or something, but it's very frustrating because we don't really know what's going on. Was there justifiable cause for eliminating this person? Why? And everybody has to just remain quiet about it. When the principal at West High School 4 or 5 years ago was eliminated, and again, nobody knows the reason why, and things. We had the case of the rape at West High School, which was kept under wraps for a couple of years. There have been claims in court about that was done for political expediency. I don't know what the truth of that is, but the bottom line is there isn't openness, and our government in the end works for us, and certainly at the local level, the fact that these things can happen in a big town the size of Manchester is frustrating. So, caller, I'm sorry I don't have a better answer for you other than if I did know something, I'd be happy to reveal it. I do know from looking at social media postings from multiple people who work at Webster School and parents of kids at Webster School who are shocked, appalled, angered, upset, puzzled, all those words about why this seemingly wonderful principal was terminated. And it's really frustrating, and I think something has to change with regard to the rules surrounding this, because it would appear to me that since that principal came before and spoke in public session at the Board of School Committee meeting 2 months ago, it would seem to me that she's probably not the one driving secrecy here and insisting on there be no disclosure. I could imagine a circumstance where something is of a very personal nature and that it would be injurious to the employee for the matter to be the matter to be public. What I worry about is that it would be injurious to the members of the Board of School Committee or to the administration if the public found out something. I'm not saying that's what's happening in this case, but since everything is kept secret, no one has to report it. I could take some vindictive action against some principal or teacher in the school district if I were an administrator or a school board member, and never have to explain to anybody, and this person's life could be ruined, etc. So I'm very dissatisfied by it. I have been for a long time, and as this continues to, I don't know about grow, but certainly continue in our city, it's troubling. With regard to principals allowing teachers to discuss dissatisfaction about their contracts. So at its face, it would seem that the classroom is not the place for discussing dissatisfaction with contracts. I mean, teachers go into school; they should be going in there with a positive attitude. They're there to teach, and if they're teaching Spanish or they're teaching math or they're teaching whatever it might be, how the issue of dissatisfaction with the current contract, etc., would come up, I don't know. However, I'm also not the direct answer would be that if I think any principal and people above him or her who are aware of it also, it should be pretty simple. If I were a principal and I were talking to teachers working in my building, I would leave them in no doubt as to the fact that this is not an appropriate topic to be sharing with children. And however, so the however piece is this. So I say that the however piece is this: is that when you get to high school and you're discussing, I also, because of my support for openness and sort of bright lights and fresh air are good things when it comes to information and knowledge, etc. I think that an embargo on discussions of topics of the day or real topics in the city, etc., at classes that are doing social studies or classes that are, in high school. I know it's not university, which I think should be a complete open forum for everybody of all, no matter how extreme the views on all sides. I think that's the nature of universities. At high school, though, I do think that if there was a discussion going on, having said what I've said about teachers, this is not something that teachers should be bringing up while teaching math or something, but I don't see how you would teach a civics class in one of our high schools in 2018, and when the subject came up about whatever it might be, that then it would be impossible not to address it. So I hope I'm not sound like I'm hedging things there, but I can see a scenario where there would be a legitimate reason for a discussion where this would come up. That's where the lines get greyed a little bit. If people are sort of espousing, quasi-political views or something, then that's not acceptable. What I think is very unacceptable, just to bring some clarity to my position. What I think is unacceptable is a teacher going into school and using their position of authority in front of a group of 25 kids to spout off about woe is me and we're not getting paid and our contract is this, that, and the other thing. That would be a cause for concern and a reason for discipline, I think. There's just no reason for that because it's not educationally sound or anything else. So thank you for the call, Mike. I appreciate it. I need to spend some time on the issue about this secrecy thing, and but in the end, would it be right if because of the people that I know, and because I know a lot of people on the school board, and I know people in the administration, and I know some principals and vice principals, would it be right if Jim O'Connell was able to find out kind of like this get a sneak peek of the backstory? That would be more a story about more privilege of some being in the know and the general population not. It would be more about that than it would be about shining any light on it. So I think as a board, the board of school committee needs to look at this privacy issue and find some way of resolving the dissatisfaction. I think I hear it in your voice, in your question, but I certainly am dissatisfied about it. Thank you again. So on a happier note for a minute. With all the things, people always say there are always great things happening in our schools, and there are. There's so many great things all the time, and and between that and the fact that people who know me know that while I don't think soccer is the only game in the world, it does happen to be a game that I grew up with, and so I'd like to use this platform just to congratulate the Central High School girls who won the state championship down in Nashua and beat Londonderry, a good team itself. They beat Londonderry 5-0. And so the Central girls soccer team has now retained the state championship. So they've been state championships back-to-back years. So congratulations to them. And congratulations to Peter Lally, the coach of that team. He's been there coaching the girls' soccer team for more than 20 years at Central High School, and to be still out there and doing it, I congratulate him. It's a great bunch of girls. What's good about it is that there are some really talented younger girls there. Erin Fleury is one of the stars of that team, who's a real dynamo in the attack. Her and Paige LeBurge were the scourge of defences across the state. Well, actually, for the last 2 years, but Erin, taking nothing away from all the other players, Erin's just a sophomore, so she's going to be around for a while. So Coach Lally's going to have, he's got a lot of great girls in that team. Emily Greenwood, I think, is also a sophomore probably, and so there's lots of there's lots of talent on that team. Paige LeBurge, who is an amazing player. I watched her the first time 4 years ago when she was a freshman. I saw her at the first game she ever played, and she was subbed on. And her second touch of the ball, she scored a goal with. Received the ball in the halfway line around somewhere on the wing, and carried it forward, beat a defender, and scored from distance. And it was a thing of beauty. And I'm thinking, oh wow! I knew she was a good player for a long time, and I was thinking, wow, what a great player. But it's just wonderful to see. In this case, 22, and plus all the subs, 22 girls from two cities, playing soccer at a very high level and doing a great job, and it's a commendation of the city and of our program. On the boys' side, commiserations to the boys. The Central High School boys team was beaten in the state final the previous day on Saturday over at the wonderful new stadium at SNU. I mean, SNU had a pretty good soccer and lacrosse and whatever, but field before. And it would still exist with a wonderful surface, artificial surface on it. But now they have a stadium which is just just really, really nice, newly built on the campus there, and it was a wonderful advertisement for the school and for the city and for the state. To have such a facility to play the state finals in it. Earlier that day on Saturday, also another Manchester school, Trinity High School, which the boys team had gone unbeaten for the season, and Trinity has had some tough years across sports generally. This team has been a couple of my neighbours, Dominic and Anthony DeZillo are a couple of players. Anthony's the key goalkeeper on there, and so congratulations to them. They didn't win; they were beaten. It was 0-0 at full time and 0-0 still after overtime, and they were beaten in a penalty shootout. So commiserations to them, but still, it was Division 3, I think, the Division 3 final. But good for them. Central, as I said, they were beaten by Bedford, and they were beaten 3-1 in the end. It was a 1-1 game, and then they in the 75th or 80th minute of 90, Central conceded a goal, and they also had the misfortune of losing their goalkeeper in the at the very end of the semi-final. He was injured, and he was on crutches at that final game. His stand-in, a junior, Owen, who stepped in. Owen Redmond did a good job. It's very hard to jump in at that level at a state final, and I talked to him just since that game, and he said, I kept us in that game for 70 something minutes, and I said to him, I told him I thought that was a wonderful job. So the boys have been beaten in the state final twice. Central has been in that state final twice in 2 years, and been beaten in 2 years. I think the broader point for folks who across the city who have kids at West or at Memorial or MST, or who will be going to those schools, it's great to see the city of Manchester being represented, having teams represented at the state final. So in the last 2 years, this year, Central girls were champions, Central boys were runners-up, and last year exactly the same outcome. Central boys were runners-up and Central girls were champions. There are a lot of fine schools, a lot of big schools in the state, and to be in there doing that for multiple years is a real achievement. And particularly when you look at the fact that most of the kids, or those kids who were playing for Central, and who play for the other high schools, they never had the benefit that all the other schools in the state had of having a middle school program. Kids come into our high schools without having ever played interscholastic soccer or other sports for that matter. So the fact that our coaches and our kids can do in 4 years what others seek to achieve over 7, that itself is, well, first of all, it's something that shouldn't be happening, and secondly, it's a combination of theirs. Lastly, in this soccer segment, go out and vote if you haven't. In the soccer segment, there's the coach of Bedford High School is a friend of mine, Stuart Pepper. And Stuart is an Englishman who's lived in America, United States for 20 years or so, came here as part of the British Are Coming soccer camps, which I've been associated with in the north end of Manchester, Livingston Park, which are now in their 26th year. And he came here and ended up staying here and living here, and he teaches at Bedford High School, which he's now done for many years, and is just a really, well, first of all, a very good person, but also an excellent soccer coach. So congratulations to him and to the kids at Bedford High School, because Central High School was an amazing team this year, and it took an extraordinary team to beat them. I think on any given day, either of those two teams could have won. On Saturday, sadly for Manchester, it ended up being Bedford. But I'm delighted for Stuart Pepper, who has been knocking on the door of the state championship in New Hampshire for 10 years or so. And certainly they were promoted to the first division in 2011, and this is their first win. So So good for him. So moving on, just a couple of things that are coming up. I sadly the parental involvement subcommittee meeting was on last night, so we're too late for that. But as I tell people often, the Manchester School District website is it's under refurbishment right now, so I think they've done a better job over time. But there's lots of information on there about what's happening. The coffee and conversations with the superintendent continue as of tomorrow. So just looking here at if I can find the date, and of course it disappears just as I do that. So let's go back. So November 7th. So tomorrow morning. I don't know why it's not coming up on my. Why it's bringing me to the wrong place. So here it is. So tomorrow, November 7th at 7:30 a.m., the superintendent will be at Parker Varney on Pollock Drive. So that's 7:30 tomorrow morning. And then on the following day, on November 8th, Thursday, he'll be at 4:30 p.m. at Memorial High School over on Crusader Way. So those are the next two opportunities to, if you have something you want to speak to the superintendent about, or you want to hear about what's going on, that is available to you there. The other thing is that Manchester Proud has been conducting listening sessions. If I can find it right here, if you go to manchesterproud.org. And if you go, you can click on community events, and they have a whole series of events, and they've been reaching out to talk to community members. Between the effort led by Committeeman Jimmy LaHoo on the Parental Involvement Committee, the work of Manchester Proud, to reach out to the community. The superintendent visiting schools every few weeks and being there early in the morning before people go to work, and again in the afternoon after people have come home from work or as they come home from work. These are opportunities for parents or anybody who has an interest in Manchester Public Schools to be able to voice their concerns or their thoughts or get answers, etc. Also, Mayor Craig has initiated this conversations with the mayor effort, and she's been carrying them around to different departments. So last night, for instance, which was Monday night, Mayor Craig was at the health department over on North Elm Street, and it started at 5:30, I believe. I was a little late in getting there at 6 o'clock. It was great. The previous one had been at the Courier Museum. This one last night was at the health department. There were probably, I'm guessing, maybe 16 people or something, 16 to 20 people, I'd guess, who showed up there and voiced their concerns. And they had lots of different concerns about lots of things. The new health department director was there, who took over from Tim Susi recently. But you get it, Mayor Craig is there. She has her notepad out and she's listening and taking notes, and kudos to her. And then if you're interested in going to the next, there is actually one to meet with the mayor on Thursday at 5:30. And it's on at the Palace Theatre Spotlight Room and on Hanover Street. So if you go to the Palace Theatre, and she'll be with I see Baines, I think of Mayor Baines' son, Alderman Ward 3, Alderman Tim Baines, and also the parking manager, Denise Boutillier, will be there, and the mayor at 5:30 on Thursday. So those are three opportunities, and then you add to this the Manchester Proud effort to talk to parents and others. So they're next. You have to go to their website because there are a lot of listening sessions for Manchester Proud. But the next one here is on tomorrow, November 7th, from 6 to 7 p.m. So you could go to Parker Varney. Is it Parker Varney tomorrow morning? You could be at. You could then go to Memorial to to partake. It's a memorial family listening session, because they have sessions for support staff, for teachers, and for others at each of these schools as well. But the one for parents is on tomorrow, and it's followed up. That's from 6 to 7 p.m. at Memorial, and the following day on November 8th, there's a listening session for parents, I think it is as well. Yeah, for parents at our family listening session at Memorial, and that's on from 9 to 10 a.m. So whether you're around during the day or during the afternoon, there's an opportunity for you. And then if you go down through the site, there's an opportunity for a Memorial support staff listening session, which goes on another day, and then Goslar Park. The family one for that is November 13th from 4 to 5. The point is, I sometimes I was at the police department sometime about 2 weeks ago, and I've learned a long time ago through doing this and talking about schools that I've learned to be very careful about making claims and saying things or being sure of my facts, because again and again I find out that things are a little more complicated than they may first seem, and if you're looking at something as complex as Manchester Schools, which is not like running IBM, but it's still a complex enterprise. That most of the people you're talking to, be they parents, teachers, support staff, paras, subs, administrators, superintendents, school board members, the whole chain. The people you're talking to are not really dumb and stupid and don't know how to fix problems or something. That's not the nature of the way things are. So if you find yourself sitting looking at the Manchester Schools and you have what you think is a simple solution to something, I have found in my experience that usually that means that there's something more to the issue than you're seeing. And so, to bring it back to the conversation at the police department, I was at the police department, and there was a terrible delay because there was only one person working, and there were a whole line of people waiting to do various things there. And there was a conversation going on, which spread from a group of two people speaking to ending up with a group of 5 or 6 people speaking. Some were grandparents or parents of kids in the school system, and I don't want to. I could just stop here and not say any more for fear of seeming arrogant or know-it-all or something. But I have to tell you, I was standing there, and pretty much everything that was said in that ridiculous conversation between those 5 or 6 people was false. I'm talking about just matters of fact. They were saying things that I knew, having some kids in the Manchester school system, that just weren't so. They talked about the policy of the school district was changed now, and no child was allowed to get any result less than 70% in any school, because that's the way they coddle children today. They were saying there's no civics in our schools anymore. And this conversation, which was ignorance on wheels, just people who don't know what they're talking about, who are, I don't know what their Kool-Aid they're drinking or where they're talking. I was shocked, because how can you move forward as a district or as a city when people insist on things that have no basis in reality? We see that in national politics enough. But to see it sort of in that little microcosm, standing in the police department the other day while waiting, and literally every claim that was made in the 5 or 10 minutes that I stood there, all 5 or 6 people, and I don't mean to insult anybody if you happen to be one of them and we can recognize yourself in this conversation. My purpose isn't to hurt you or to insult you or anything, even though it may be both of those. It's just ridiculous that people say things that just aren't true. I find it. I talked to somebody a few weeks ago, and they were giving out about the kids coming from the contributing towns, and we were educating other. And like, that problem's been gone. That's been gone for years now, and we had some residual effect over time. But that horse bolted a long time ago, and here's this guy mouthing off about what's wrong with Manchester schools. It's just infuriating. I tie it into this, ladies and gentlemen, because with all the opportunities there are, there's never been a time that I know of, certainly in the 26 years or so that I've been here, there's never been a time where it's easier to speak to the mayor, the school board, and its representatives, the principals, they're accessible. Like just from the list I've read you here a minute ago, go on the Manchester School MANSD website. Go on the Manchester Proud website, and you could almost make a career of going to meetings multiple times a week, separate from City Hall and getting 3 minutes in front of a microphone there, but to actually get answers and to deliver concerns. There's no excuse today for standing around at Hannaford's or Market Basket or having coffee with your friends, spouting off about stuff that simply isn't true. Not because you mean to lie and you're being malicious, but simply because you don't know any better. But more importantly, when you have complaints to make or concerns, it's not about complaints. If you have a concern about your kid or your neighbor's kid, or there's something happening that you think is wrong, or you're not getting the services you require, and I know that goes on, then please, instead of going on Facebook and talking about it, or go talk to these people. They're sitting there, there was a Manchester Proud meeting at Central High School that I attended within the last 2 weeks, and there were 3 parents showed up for the meeting. Now, it wasn't at the most convenient time because it was around lunchtime one day, and so people are out of town and out of state and all that stuff, but still 3 people. And to be clear, parent-teacher organizations, PTGs, PTAs, PTOs, have been around forever. They're always looking for people. There's always an opportunity. The meetings are on every month. Of the 3 people at the meeting at Central, I was there. I happened to be the former president of the Hillside PTO. The person sitting next to me was the woman who followed me up as the president of the PTO person there, and the third person was a grandparent. So out of 1,500 families, And I'm not saying that people should be there and, why weren't they there? I'm saying that, the opportunities are there, so just go take them. It's not as though anybody doesn't want to give you the information. You can meet the superintendent and address whatever issues you have with the school district at least twice a month, sometimes 4 or 5 times a month, just in his coffee and conversations piece, let alone all the other opportunities being allowed to people. So if the school, if people aren't, I want to put to bed the idea that that parents are not being listened to in the Manchester School District. What actions are being taken as a result of those listening sessions, I can't verify or vouch for, but clearly there are no closed doors. So people should take that opportunity. And then in the case of the mayor, as I said, on Thursday at the Palace Theatre at 5:30, whether it's garbage or Parks and Rec or whatever your the opiate crisis or crime or police or schools or fire, whatever the topic is of concern to you or the suggestions you might have, then roll right up. The other thing, ladies and gentlemen, is that there's a slew of slew being an inaccurate term for a lot, an imprecise term, but there are a lot of boards in the city for people to partake in. There's the Art Commission, the Police Commission, the Water Board. There are a lot of commissions and boards that you have to be appointed to, but all you have to do is contact the mayor's office, and I think you submit some resume, just say, like, here's who I am, and I live in Manchester, and I'm interested in serving on the Humanities Board, or whatever it might be. I don't know, is there a Cemeteries Board? I don't know, but there are a lot of boards that are open to people. So if you there's a biblical saying, about the harvest is great and the laborers are few. And this is true in city government too. There's plenty opportunity for people to be involved if they'd like to be involved, and there are plenty of places for people to play. Switching tacks a little here. In recent weeks nationally, there's been the terrible tragedy of the people shot to death and wounded at the synagogue in Pittsburgh. And then the pipe bomb thing that happened. There was there were two African American people killed in a shooting the same weekend, the weekend before last, I think it was. But here in Manchester, we had at Wagner Park, which is sometimes called Pretty Park. It's on the corner of like Myrtle and Maple Street. That looks like a mausoleum, but whatever that structure is, excuse my ignorance for not having the right word for it, but that stone structure, the park has been renewed in recent years, and new plantings have been done, and and there's still more work to be done, but they've done a wonderful job on it in recent years. And so people go there, high school kids go there for their graduation photographs. There are weddings all through the fall and summer and spring. There are always limousines stop there where newly married couples get out, or about to be married couples get out, whatever, and have their photographs taken with their bridesmaids and groomsmen, and it's a very pretty place. Donated by a benefactor to the city many years ago, to commit their memory to history, and the house that they lived in was demolished, and they had the park created and funds put in place to finance the maintenance of the park into perpetuity. And so that park is upkept by those funds. So it's a little gem in the middle of the city, right next to the Courier Gallery, or very close to the Courier Gallery. Another gem. But anyway, somebody went there on the night that the killings happened at the synagogue in Pittsburgh. Somebody went and spray painted onto letters onto the structure, the granite structure at Pretty Park, and they also inscribed or spray painted a swastika, a large one, covering the floor of that building. And there are a couple of temples or synagogues on Maple Street, and one is within a block and a half of where that happened. And there was also swastika spray painted on a person's fence very close to there, and also on a car. So I am just appalled that this. I live not far from there, and that this would happen in any neighborhood is awful. For it to happen in this neighborhood, and for it to happen close to a synagogue, and for it to happen at a time when people were in shock already about the largest attack on the Jewish community in the history of the United States in terms of number of people being killed. This is not the first time we've had this in Manchester. We had a store, an arson at a store on the west side 2 years ago, where a swastika was spray painted on the building. In that case, it was I think it was a store that was owned by a Muslim family. But the fact that this kind of hatred exists in our city is shocking to me. And people need to just wake up and be aware of it. And I think the issue of no tolerance is where I would I am very passionate about this topic. I think that I've seen it in other places at other times against other minorities in other communities. And so sometimes these things, it's like the thin end of the wedge. And so I'm a zero tolerance kind of person in this regard. And so when we have public people in public life who are not clear in their condemnation of these things, or who peddle in distrust / hatred or bigotry against minorities, then so long as you won't do it to one, you do it to all. And so I think it's a cautionary lesson to all of us here in Manchester that this issue is not something that belongs in the headlines elsewhere, but that it's right here in our city, in our midst. And we need to be brave enough, despite the fact that it's sometimes very uncomfortable, we need to be brave enough to stand up to people and say that's not tolerable. And I don't want to go off on what would be low-hanging fruit and on any particular person or group of people. Some of them will know who they are from this description, because it's not the first time that I have called people out for their intolerance. But we all just need to be more temperate in our conversations. And the reason why I don't want to get involved in a back and forth on these topics is that I would just ask people to, especially in light of this election or any election, to dial back the rhetoric. The amount of intemperate language being used by public representatives in Manchester on social media, in public, God knows what they may be saying in private, but it is easy to get caught up in this stuff, and so it can have. If the worst thing that ever happens, while it's terrible, is that we have, if we could be guaranteed that people would reserve themselves to using paint on something, that is a terrible thing, and I shouldn't be saying it like that, but obviously the problem is I don't believe that stuff stops there. That level of hatred and ignorance in somebody's heart, it's like a cancer. It's a disease that eats away at people. And eventually some people take actions like this person did in Pittsburgh. And I don't think it's alarmist at all to associate hatred, distrust, dislike, and bigotry against people, any people, all of whom should have the benefit of human dignity. It just isn't. It just isn't right. And so I am actually a little surprised that our society, our community in Manchester hasn't been more forceful than it has. I know that there was a prayer service held at the temple in Manchester in the days, I think it was last Wednesday night, and maybe I just wasn't looking in the right places. I didn't see it in time, otherwise I would have gone, but I think there should be a loud exhalation of breath, and people shout out and say, this is just not right. But we have the problem is how can you be blunt about this without getting involved in sort of what seems like partisan stuff? But in the case of President Trump and his racist advertising around the caravan, it's very hard to sit here wanting to be moderate and, as I've used the word again, temperate, and given the heightened level of people's anxieties and passions around election time. But to be, lying about something like this and creating fear in people and spending our taxpayers' money. I don't understand how my friends who are fiscal conservatives can support sending 15,000 troops to the southern border. To do what? We have tens of thousands of border agents and ICE agents. There's nobody asking for help there. There's no call for help there. There's no need for help there. This is expending government money, which, as you all know, is our money, the taxpayers' money, for nothing other than for a political gain and electoral expediency. And so from a financial and fiscal point of view, it's indefensible. As a political tactic, it's reprehensible. And as an exercise in bigotry and racism, it's despicable. But again, that's not the first time that our president has delved into these matters, and I just find it strange that people can. I listen to people being interviewed, members of the public being interviewed in advance of these elections that are on right now and about to finish in 5 minutes. That they sort of say, I wish he'd toned down the rhetoric. I like what he does, but I wish he'd toned down the rhetoric. Well, what he does is Muslim bans. That's what he does. What he does it affects our foreign policy. What he does has a real effect on American citizens. 3,000 American citizens died in a hurricane on President Trump's watch. That's twice as bad as Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. There's not a peep about it. 3,000. As many people died in the hurricane that hit the Dominican Republic or Puerto Rico as died, as many people as died on 9/11. Those are American citizens. Now, they may not all speak perfect English. Maybe that's the problem people have with identifying with them. Maybe their skin's a little browner than a lily white person, as Donald Trump would say. Why can't we have people from Norway? I like Norwegian people, but I don't know what it is. But this idea that it's just the president's rhetoric is the problem. The rhetoric is reprehensible to begin with. The rhetoric is awful. The rhetoric has a real effect. It's all lies. So there are lies abound across it from one end to the other. It's lies. So it's not like he's saying things and he's representing a point of view and he's saying things and he's just being condemned because he's no. He's making stuff up whole cloth. And he's choosing. He's not making up stories about the Patriots won 6 Super Bowls, not 5. He's not making up stuff about we have 53 states, not 50. They're not little funny things. He's not saying that somebody won 10 Oscars and they only won 1. He's lying. So he goes to a rally the night after the shooting dead of 11 members of the Jewish community. He's holding a rally that night. And he jokes about maybe he shouldn't have held the rally because he was having a bad hair day. But basically, he says the show must go on because, he was in New York right after 9/11. And the following day, the stock market opened up. And they went, and he didn't just say that. He went into explanations about, he had talked to people, they had told him about all the how difficult it was and all the work they had to put into making sure that the stock market opened the following day. It was all lies. The stock market was closed for a week after 9/11. So here's, if you're one of the 40% of people in America who support President Donald Trump, this man is, think about this for a minute. He's lying about the greatest tragedy the country has seen in terms of terrorism. He's lying about that to defend his obnoxious behavior on the night that the largest attack on Jewish people in the history of the United States has happened. And he sits there on camera in front of you and lies to your face. And many of you say, well, I wish he'd cut down the rhetoric. It's his rhetoric. So, lastly, ladies and gentlemen, for all of you who are concerned about these matters and have gone out and voted today, and I don't know what to say to those of you who didn't, but those who went out and voted today, whatever the results are, no one's going to win all the races. The world's not going to end. I-93 will be there tomorrow morning, and you'll be able to drive up and down it. Things may change over time in small ways. That's the nature of the world. Don't be depressed. if you're on the losing side of a race, and don't be too cocky. Everything won't change for the better if you're on the winning side. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it, and we'll see you all again next week. Thank you, and good night.